Hello everybody, this is Sneaky the Lost and welcome back to Omnifactory. As you can see, I've mostly moved in here. You see I've upgraded my furnaces to a single obsidian furnace, through which I had to go through the diamond furnaces. But, I had the diamonds, so why not? And the obsidian furnace, while it has fewer fuel slots, smelts 2 items at a time, so that also smelts 2 items for a single smelt worth of fuel, so just doubles your fuel efficiency as well as your speed, on top of it being just a really fast furnace. So we're going to be using that quite extensively for our manual smelting of things. You also notice I've got a macerator here, and I've got a basic electrolyzer over here with some clay dust in it. So why clay dust? Well, electrolyzing clay dust is one way to get lithium that we got for the batteries earlier that I just went ahead and bought the ore for. But in addition to that, it also makes aluminum dust, which we will definitely need going forward. Silicon dust, which we'll need for electrical steel. Sodium dust, which has its uses. And, yeah, basically it's really useful. I wanted to make a lot of electrical steel because these hardened upgrade kits, 4 Invar ingots, 4 Invar plates, and an electrical steel block. Ouch. However, they are useful. Oh, let me show you what I did downstairs. I finished off this build here. So here's what's going on. You've got this observer. Whenever it sees a redstone pulse, it emits a redstone pulse, which goes back here and continues that along. In addition, we've got this thing into a redstone repeater going into the redstone conduit here, which attaches to the collectors at the bottom and the dispensers on top. This gives a strong signal, so it will push it up into the dispensers to also trigger. So they're all on the same flickering timer. And you'll also notice they go in here and then into the SNAD from the conduits as well. So this is kind of a modular design. If I get more SNAD, I can just continue extending. And I would have to move this power setup to do so, but that is doable. And then you have the item conduits, because here's what's going on. You're trying to figure out what's going on here. Let me show you. You notice this is a bucket of water. Well, when you place water on reeds, it will break it, but it will just drop it straight down. And so then it will be picked up by the collectors below it. So you basically have an infinite reed farm. Nice, quick, clean, compact. This is, I guess you could say, my multi-block garden cloche. Only without, and without that particular mod being in the pack. And then I've got made of a little bit of iron, of the item conduits. I did have to make some, I did have to smelt up a bit of that uranite that I had made earlier, or I had purchased earlier with my Omni coins. And so that's just pulling stuff straight into here. Now, I do have a void upgrade on here, because this is sugarcane positive, or at least it was. And so eventually it is going to completely fill up. In fact, I think it already has filled up. Yeah, 2048 is exactly 1 stack. And once it fills up, it's just going to void the rest. That's so I don't get a really awful mess here, because once these guys back stuff, this is just going to be sitting out in the world, and that's going to pretty much lag bomb my my game, and that is no bueno. So, Steam Dynamo, only with a boiler conversion upgrade. Basically, instead of producing 40 RF a tick, it instead produces steam, and it's normally 160, but because I put in a hardened upgrade, it produces 240 steam. The steam dynamos, which are the basic ones, I haven't upgraded these yet. They still come with 2 augment slots right out of the gate, which is, I don't think that is normal for thermal expansion unless something has changed recently with it. Normally you need to put in at least a hardened upgrade to get these augments, so that's nice. But they went from 20 or 40 RF a tick each to 160 RF per tick each. That's 4 times the energy. So I built 2 more, and I built these modules, and the modules aren't that bad. I needed a piece of fused quartz for the boiler conversion. The rest of the stuff was very easy mode stuff to get, and it just octupled my power output. Now I'm creating at most 320 RF per tick. Now it doesn't do me any good to give it the throttle upgrade. Steam dynamos, they're just gonna straight up always run. You can't. You see, generation cannot be throttled, so it won't do me any good at all to give it the module that when it's full it'll not produce, unfortunately. But since everything is running on renewable resources right now, this is going to do me. And by putting in these hardened upgrades, they now have a maximum output of 240 RF per tick each. That's 480 RF per tick, which is almost the max of the conductive energy conduit, which is 512, remember? So we're just about maxing out this conduit with just these 3 steam dynamos, and that is going to handle me just fine until we get into probably medium voltage, if not a little bit more. So with our energy sorted, you'll also notice I've started getting some drawers back here. We're going to start our wall of drawers back here. You'll also notice I fixed this floor here. This was a big old pit, and back that away was a cavern. I had some zombies and other unpleasant visitors coming through there. And I did not wish to talk about their Lord and Savior Herobrine, and so I walled up the place. So, I may actually knock out this ceiling. There's technically a second floor here, a second basement. This is the second basement with a first basement here. But I may just knock out this first basement floor entirely and just make it one big, huge basement. That seems like that's going to pretty much do me a better thing going forward, because we're going to need some space down here. So, yeah, the flickering redstone does a bunch of updates. That's not exactly the healthiest thing for a server, but since I'm playing single player, it works for me. So let's talk about what else I've done. We've got that electrolyzer and the macerator. The thing with the macerator, most pond packs, you go, okay, great, I've got a macerator, I've got ore doubling, now we're playing. Not exactly. The problem is to ore double, like, for example, let's look at sphalerite. Well, let's not, because that's kind of a poor example. Let's look at iron ore. Okay, just straight up iron ore. You know what, let's just look at it in JEI here. Right, we've got just straight up iron ore. Now then, I can smelt it up into a single ingot, or I could pulverize it into 2 ingots, or 2 crushed iron ore, with a decent chance for nickel and stone dust with higher tier pulverizing options. So, crushed iron ore, I have to pulverize again into impure piles of iron dust, with again a chance for nickel. And then impure piles of dust, I can either smelt directly into an ingot, or I can centrifuge, which also nets me a couple of piles of tiny piles of tin dust, as well as the iron dust. So that's where we're going to start getting some of our harder to obtain components, and it sounds like that they're going to start up that rave, so let's just turn on the lights again so they can Stop that. Yeah, my next door neighbors apparently hold massive raves every night. They just start wandering around, drunk and disorderly. It's a real nuisance. We'll do something about the neighborhood. In fact, I've already done quite a bit of scavenging through the neighborhood. I've found some useful things. This is the most important thing I have found so far. A drill core. I'm not going to be able to take advantage of it yet. I'm going to need a blast furnace. But that's going to be awesome going forward. So, however, I have found some other things. I found an ender with direct, so that basically it magnets any mob drops directly to my inventory. And empowered 3, which increases the damage it does. Which is nice. Dark steel boots. These particular ones have empowered 3, jump 3, and flippers. And the staff of traveling with 1 level of empowered on it. These are some useful, fun pieces of kit. However, they all require power. Now, I could just swap them out in there, in my CEF, and just throw them in there, and it would recharge them, and that would be nice. However, what would be even more nice is if I could have a way to store RF on my person. And for that, it looks like I'm going to probably be going with a flux capacitor, which requires 2 lead ingots, a copper ingot, some redstone, and some sulfur dust. So, how am I going to do that? Well, for that, I found some... Remember, I told you I had found a silver deposit? Well, silver deposits also have a lot of galena ore in them, and galena... I've been macerating it down to the impure piles of galena dust. You centrifuge that to get galena dust, and then you electrolyze the galena dust to get lead dust, silver dust, and sulfur dust. Isn't that convenient? So let's go ahead and get that process started over here. Let's pull that clay dust out of here and get that started. By the way, clay dust, fun fact, really easy way to get lots of clay dust. This terracotta stuff, all of the terracottas will pulverize into 4 clay dust. All of the different colors will. So, great way of getting a lot of clay dust without having to, like, pulverize cobble all the way down to gravel to sand to dust and then mixing that with water to make clay. So, fun fact, really great time saver. Oh, centrifuge it, not electrolyze it. Right, so I need a centrifuge. So, what I have done, I've made some components, and I think I'm just about ready to... Actually, you know what, I think I've got it up here, don't I? Yes, I do. Boom. Now that's going to be 4 primitive circuits, couple of motors, couple of 10 cables, machine hull, bada bing, bada boom. Alright, let's just go ahead and drop that down here for now. That's on the edge of the chunk boundary, but that's okay, it's not a multi-block, we're good. So, let's go ahead and centrifuge up this galena dust here. There we go. And you'll also notice I've got some sphalerite ore. I bought some with some Omni coins because, again, we've got plenty of Omni coins. I put one of them over there. I'm probably going to build a wall of ores downstairs just so I don't have to keep looking at it. I also haven't brought my wall of ores from the other site just yet. It's kind of a low priority for me at the moment. And this is going to be useful because when you pulverize it, it pulverizes into crushed sphalerite ore, which crushes into impure pile of sphalerite dust, which centrifuges into sphalerite dust and tiny piles of gallium dust, which are going to be extraordinarily useful going forward in the making of diodes, as well as certain other things. Gallium dust actually is really useful in making... I thought there was a component that required it. I'm sure we'll run across it as we go forward. So galena dust, tiny piles of lead dust, and then this galena dust we electrolyze, but I think we need 8 of them. And you notice how slow this is running. So yeah, ore processing does not happen very fast at low voltage tier. And you're pretty much, with how common the ores are in this pack, how easy it is to obtain them, and how painfully slow it is to do this kind of stuff, you really don't need to do much ore doubling until you get into the higher tiers. However, if you do want the secondary stuff, you are going to need a centrifuge and an electrolyzer. This is where you're going to get most of your rarer elements from. So, going to let that run. Let's go ahead and check out this book here. So, we made the diamond furnace. Now, the book expects you to need a fluid solidifier to make obsidian with. I did not bother doing that. I just went downstairs with a bucket of water, found a lava pool, and got myself some obsidian. So, yeah. But I did make a gear mold. It's what I've been using to make gears in this alloy smelter. As you can see, I've already screwed up once and made a nickel gear because I had left the gear mold in there when I was trying to make some Invar for those upgrades. So hopefully I'll be able to melt that down at some point and recapture that nickel, but otherwise it's a thing that happens. Basic electrolyzer, I made an extra one by mistake, so I'll figure out what to do with that. Also, GregTech automation. Did you know GregTech actually has some level of automation built in the GTCE? So what I've done here, for example, is I've hit this orange button to export automatically. And then I took the GregTech wrench, which is right here. Now, when you look at a GregTech machine, you notice these hatch marks show up. That's going to be the different size. So you click here, you right-click there, and it outputs to the back. You click up here, and it outputs to the front. The corners are up and down, then left and right. So I can tell it to aim its output slot any direction. And if you hit the output slot with a screwdriver, you will be able to import on your output slot, which will be very handy going forward as I start automation. Probably less useful right now. So, let's see where we are here. So we've got at least 8 of those. We're going to do that. And again, this is so painfully slow. Yeah, ore doubling is not as efficient, and really a lot of these elements aren't really going to get you ore doubling. They're just going to get you different types of ores. For example, magnetite ore. I've been just smelting it straight up into iron, but if I pulverize it and then crush it and then crush it again and then centrifuge it, I can get magnetite dust and tiny piles of gold dust. And then magnetite smelts up into basically 1/3 of an ingot. Or I can electrolyze 7 of them to get 3 iron dust, which will each smelt up. But that's 7 magnetite dust. And also some oxygen, which will be useful much later. Much later. So, well, not much later. That's going to be when we're starting to get into our plastic production. I also made some dark steel because the quest book told me to, and because there are a lot of things that I'm wanting to do in that direction. I made some of the pressurized fluid conduits. It's just glass and the conduit binder. It's not that hard. I finally made myself all 3 different types of wrenches. Made that macerator. We talked about that. Compacting drawers are a thing we can technically do now. I will probably be doing more of those later. That's eventually where we're going to be storing a lot of things like ingots, redstone, that kind of stuff that compresses down at a 9-to-1 ratio. So there's that. Robot arms are going to be really useful because that's going to be needed for the assembler. Robot arms can also be used to, I believe robot arms as well as conveyor belts can be used to place on the side of a block to be able to export automatically as well as import, to be able to pull as well as push from adjacent inventories. Blast Furnace obviously is going to be the next major project we're going to want to do. That's going to require 16 copper nickel blocks, and that's going to require 8 2x copper nickel wires each. So each copper nickel wire is basically 1 copper nickel ingot in the wire mill, so that's 8 copper nickel ingots each. 8 times 16 is a lot. Copper nickel is 1 nickel and 1 copper. So we are going to need a lot of nickel going forward. More so because the other thing we're going to want to be able to do our advanced circuits is going to be a pyrolyzed oven, which is also a multi-block structure that's going to need some of those things. Oh, and again, this is so very slow. We're just going to go ahead and do that. And you know what? We're just going to put this with the rest of our ores. Did a lot of mining and resource gathering between episodes as well. That nickel deposit that I found was actually bigger than I had anticipated, which is good. I found some garnierite, which can smelt up directly into nickel, or can be crushed, and then crushed again, and that makes less than an ingot's worth. Or centrifuged into 3 tiny piles of nickels and garnierite dust, which is either part of a nickel or electrolyzes 2 to 1 directly into nickel dust. So we're just going to smelt those directly. Garnierite as well as pentlandite. Yeah, you thought I was going to mix it up again, didn't you? And also cobaltite. And you'll notice I have a cobalt pickaxe. Cobalt is a tier 3 mining pick so that I can actually break obsidian with it. It's not the most sturdy. Wrought iron actually has more durability than cobalt does, but cobalt can mine obsidian and other things that requires a tier 3 miner mining to be able to do. So there's the impure piles of sphalerite dust, which we now need to centrifuge. There we go. Oh, we've actually got a lot of tiny piles of lead dust from doing the galena. So what we're going to do then is tiny piles, do this, and do this, and balance that out. Oh, okay, it is a 9 to 1 ratio. Okay, gotcha. And now we've got some lead dust that we can smelt up into lead. There we go. Oh, I got some gallium. There we go. Ah, Excellent. That's down here because for the first of the tier 2 circuits that I'm going to need for the pyrolyze oven, I'm going to need 4 primitive circuits and that diode we talked about earlier, and some red alloy cable and some wrought iron plates. Making the tools to make the tools. That's what this stage is all about so far. Alright, so let's go ahead and centrifuge up some galena dust because we will need some sulfur. There we go. Let's just put this stuff over here for now. Oh, right, electrolyzed galena dust. That's right. Ah, there's our sulfur. Excellent. So, now that we have our lead and our sulfur, we should be able to anyway, be able to make our flux capacitor with a piece of copper and some redstone. So, some redstone and some copper. I know I've got copper somewhere. No? Okay, well, I'll just smelt up some copper ore. In a way, it's kind of nice not having to wait for your ore doubling mechanic. Just the freedom of being able to just say, you know what, I just want to smelt it, and to heck with the efficiency, because I'm getting so efficient. Oh, that reminds me, something I forgot to mention about the basic wire mill. I said that, you know, you went from being able to make 2 cables from 1 ingot instead of 2 ingots into a plate into 1 cable. So it's 4 times as efficient. Well, it's actually more than that, because a lot of these recipes that we're using the wire are now using fine copper wire, which is a 4-to-1 ratio again. So I'm actually being 16, 4 times 4, 16 times as efficient. So there you go. For my copper, just by using the wire mill, which is why that was just so amazing. Basic flux capacitor. There we go. And now I have the basic flux capacitor. The upgraded version requires 2 Invar ingots and a tin ingot. I've got that. I'm going to go ahead and just do that right now, if you don't mind. I'm going to need 2 of you, 1 of you, because I think I only have 1 Invar left. Yeah. So we'll just make up a little bit of Invar real quick. And 1 tin. I should have some tin lying around. And I do. So let's just go ahead and just upgrade that to hardened tier straight off the bat. And that can store 40 million RF. That should keep me for a while. It's not, you know, reinforced level, which I could actually do. I mean, that's Electrum and fused glass. That's actually not that bad. By the way, a lot of these buildings, FYI, use these blocks of quartz as a building material, which breaks down into 4 nether quartz, which you can then throw in the basic alloy smelter to get fused quartz with. Fun fact. So fused quartz is not a difficult resource to come by. I will need 1 gold and 1 silver. So 1 gold, 1 silver. I'm just kind of, you know, future-proofing my personal kit. So, is there anything else I need? No, doesn't look like it. Good. And there we go. Reinforced flux capacitor, 90 million RF storage. All right, and now we're just going to start charging her up. And that's going to be able to let all of my dynamos down here just really start kicking off. I hope. Why are you guys only doing 20? Ah, here we go. This guy's really kicking off. He's ramping up. He's maxed out. Now he's going to start maxing out pretty soon. Yeah, now he's ramping up. So this is actually going to give my system a little bit of a workout to charge this guy. But, you know, that'll work. So with that, I will be able to now charge all of my other electrical devices to my heart's content. I will also may want to consider some other black steel equipment. It's just a generally decent thing to do. Alright, so it's about that point. We've been talking more than doing, because we've been playing a little bit of catch-up. But as you can see, you know, I made the fine copper wires. I made the hardened satchel a while back. I just had to remind it that I did that. We made some steel, which is just here. Brain no worky. Wrought iron and coal dust in a blast alloy smelter. It's not that hard. But that is why we are not using coal for any purposes. We're using charcoal because we're going to need it all for that, because it will not take charcoal. We made the gear mold. We also made the tiny gear mold, which is useful in making those motors. Remember, I had mentioned that last episode. More materials, the uranite and the pulsating dust. I bought some uranite, and I processed it. The pulsating mesh is carbon mesh, which is 4-string and a coal dust. There's a reason I wanted that flex farm. This is why. And that makes the carbon mesh, and then 4 pulsating dust in the carbon mesh makes the pulsating mesh. Now, the next quest here is actually simulating mobs, and this is going to get into some really, really interesting stuff. Electronic circuits, pulsating mesh, glass pane, and dark steel machine hull. 8 dark steel plates around an LV machine hull. We're going to need a lot of dark steel for that. Well, dark steel, there's 2 ways to make it. Number 1 is steel and obsidian. Steel and obsidian. Number 2 is steel and void crystals. And void crystals is just coal run through the atomic reconstructor. Now, the atomic reconstructor is some lead plates, which we can do now, an ender eye lens, 2 medium voltage emitters, and aluminum casing. So we're going to have to wait until a blast furnace before we can really do that, because aluminum, unfortunately, cannot be smelted in a furnace. It needs a blast furnace because it needs high temperature. Which, true to life, aluminum, I mean, has been known for quite some time. Napoleon actually tried to get aluminum to work because he saw the potential of the metal, but it was just so expensive, so hard to produce back then, that it was actually more valuable than gold. It wasn't until they really came up with the arc furnace and found a way to mass smelt the bauxite ore into aluminum, and to get rid of all of the impurities, that aluminum became inexpensive in the material that we know today. And then they figured out how to strengthen it, because aluminum by itself is kind of a soft metal. The aluminum that you'll find in your aluminum can is actually an alloy with about 4% copper in it, typically. They may use something else these days, but that was the first actual aluminum alloy that was useful in practical applications. So, fun fact, now you know. So, we're gonna this is definitely something I'm interested in doing once we get into medium voltage. We did the interpearls, which is just, you know, it's just diamond and that pulsating dust. Pulsating iron ingot, which is the pulsating dust in an iron ingot. So we're just progressing. More materials is nickel, Invar, and copper nickel. That's your alloy furnace alloys. So yeah, that's where we are. Next episode, we're gonna get ready for some big machines. This blast furnace is gonna be big. It's gonna be huge. It's gonna get us into medium voltage territory and the ability to smelt up aluminum, a couple of other things. And of course the pyrolyze oven, we're going to want to coke up some coal and make some phenol to make the phenolic substrate for the better circuits. Until then, this is Sneaky the Lost, signing off.